Welcome to the Modern Monk podcast. This is episode number 19. Today we're talking about comparing yourself to others. My name is Cormac Taylor. I'm here with Toby Chilva. How are you doing, Toes?
Thanks for having me. Keen to be here. We've got 60 minutes. Why should we invest our time and intention listening to what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of people right now are comparing themselves to others, whether that's people ahead of where they are right now or it's people who are behind where they currently are. We're comparing ourselves to other people and it's really not helping us move towards our goals. So the goal by the end of this podcast is to get you to the point where you're no longer comparing yourself to other people. You're comparing yourself to yourself and the version of yourself that you want to be.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think if you don't know where you want to be in the next 5 years, or you know where you want to be, but you're not consistently taking the action to get there, then this is probably for you because you're going to be comparing yourself to people way above you or people who are below you, and neither of which are helping you take the action that you need to become your ideal self, which is, I think, what we all want to be.
Yeah, exactly. I think at the core of all of these podcasts is the action, because the only thing that sits between you and your goals is the action that you take. And realistically, we're answering the question, how does comparing ourselves to other people influence our actions? How can we get all of the upside of this without the big downsides? I think that's what we're going to come to by the end of this podcast. So hopefully it's very helpful.
Yeah, action, action, action. So yeah, there's a lot of comparisons we all make, but let's start with comparing yourself to people above you, people that are way ahead of where you are.
Yeah, so I think one of the big problems we have comparing ourselves to people above us is that we see the material outcomes that people have, and of course we want them. We get jealous, maybe we get envious, maybe we just have this desire to achieve what other people have, and we think, okay, I want this. But this is simply a material outcome, and it's the product of a set of actions that someone did. And realistically, a lot of us want the outcomes, but we're not willing to take the actions that other people took to get there. Very common expression that people have is that happiness is an equation between what you have and what you want. And a lot of us stack up this big pile of things that we want to have, but we're never willing to do what is required for us to get there, which means that we're never going to have it. So there's always this big disparity between what we have and what we want. And we keep seeking these things that we're never going to achieve because we're simply not willing to do what is required for us to get there.
Yeah, and it's a little bit annoying because what people get in like the outcome is so obvious, so visible. You know, people post about it, or it's tangible. It's something you can talk about. It's a figure. What was sacrificed to get that outcome is usually a lot more hidden, and so you're either not aware of it or you're not reminded of the sacrifices that you have to make to get that outcome, and so you're tricked into believing that, oh, I could just want all of these things, and it ends up just creating pain and like fear that you are behind, or you're not achieving those things or making progress towards getting them, and you don't know why. And all that's really leading to is inaction, and that's the one thing that's going to stop you from getting to the point that you want to be, achieving the things that you want.
100%. If there's this big level of fear and it's standing between us and taking action, then it's only an obstacle. It only gets in the way. And I think a good point that you mentioned here is that everyone's going to flex the outcomes that they have in their lives, whether that's I made X dollars or I look like this, right? There's all of these things that people flex, but people very rarely flex the effort required for them to get there. There's a few people that do that, but mainly it's look at these outcomes that I have. And what happens is that a lot of us think that it's a whole lot easier to get to the goals we want to get to. It's a whole lot easier and it takes a whole lot less time than we think. And as soon as we jump into it and we go, okay, I really want to achieve this big monetary outcome, let me go about doing it, very quickly you realize this takes a lot longer than I thought it was going to take. It's a lot harder than I thought it was. And this is a lot of friction, a lot of fear. And a lot of us go, this is too scary. I don't want to pursue this anymore. This is way too hard. And it's often because we compare ourselves to these big material outcomes that people have. We're not aware of what was required for us to actually get there. And when we try and pursue this material outcome and realize that we're not actually willing to do what it takes, it just adds a huge amount of pain.
Yeah, and like logically that makes so much sense, and I think we can all resonate with that. But here we are both still having done this, and here everyone else listening to this has been in the same situation. Like, this is a core fundamental part of being human. We want to fit in with the tribe, but we want to have things that other people have. We like playing these status games, and so you can't beat yourself up for wanting these outcomes that other people have achieved, especially in the age now where everyone can flex what they have all the time, and it's put in front of your face all the time. You know, this. I think, I think that's just an added layer of difficulty. The fact that you are beating yourself up for wanting something that you don't think you can achieve, and it just makes it more difficult. Which is why I think it's even more important now to be thinking about who you're comparing yourself to.
Yeah, 100%. And we talk badly about comparing up, but I honestly think that comparing yourself to people who are ahead of you is slightly better than comparing yourself to people below you. I think one of the big advantages that you have of comparing up is that it breaks a lot of limiting beliefs that we have, especially now that we're in this digital era where we can see what everyone else is doing. Generally, you're seeing the most successful people, the people that have achieved the most. And what that does is it just breaks this limiting belief that you have to think, okay, this isn't possible for me, or you can't physically achieve this. And constantly this belief gets broken over and over again. The more times you expose yourself to people that are achieving all of these things that you want, the more that this becomes real for you that, okay, this is possible for me too. And I think that's actually a big advantage of, at least for a small period of time, exposing yourself to people who have achieved big things. Realistically, none of us have to do this because we've already done this, right? Everyone spends a lot of time on social media. Everyone's already seen a lot of people way, way ahead of them. But I think it is important to put yourself in this person's shoes, right? This is possible. Other people have done it, therefore you can do it as well. Especially now that we're in this digital era, everyone has relatively similar opportunities right now. The playing field is more level than it's ever been. There's no reason that you can't achieve these things as well, assuming that you're willing to do and sacrifice what they've also been able to sacrifice. It's very much possible. And I think that's a big advantage of being able to see people who are way ahead of you, is just to realize, okay, this is possible. Whether that's a number, whether that is the way that someone looks, whether that is some sort of relationship outcome that someone has, whatever it is, some sort of outcome, all these things are possible. And the more that you expose yourself to the reality that this is possible, the more real it feels for you, and the more that you feel like, okay, I can actually take this on.
Yeah, but there's a key point there where you're breaking these limiting beliefs, you're getting all this exposure, you're realizing it's possible, and you're taking responsibility for the fact that, you know, I can make this happen, you know, I'm in control, like I could make this a reality. Then there's just a whole heap of fear that it's like, okay, well, now it's on me, it's my responsibility, and it is possible. And I think until you've broken it down until, okay, what are the actual, like, what's the next thing that I need to do? Until it's that actionable step and you can like make that first, you know, bit of momentum forward, it is just a lot of fear, and it's like overwhelming. And it's, I think where most people get trapped is, you know, they're either starting to, or they have had that limiting belief shift and they realize it is possible, and then they're just frozen by the fear because now what?
Right. Now what? And now what is always a set of actions that you have to take, right? There is always this fear, and it is nearly always in the ambiguous. It is, okay, there's this big amorphous idea of this big goal I want to achieve, and that's often scary. And it's like, there's probably a lot of things that I have to do and it's not super clear. As soon as it becomes very clear on, okay, I just need to take this set of actions, part of it is you'll realize, okay, there's a lot of actions and there's a long time I have to actually do these actions to see the results, but at least it becomes clear and obvious. As soon as it becomes clear and obvious, the fear gets reduced significantly. And I think one of the biggest things to do here, if you find yourself in the situation where you've had this big goal, you finally figure out, okay, these are kind of the set of actions I have to do, is take action on this as quickly as possible. Because the longer it takes between you having an idea to do something and doing it, the more and more and more friction you get, the more fear there is. The quicker that you can bring this idea into reality with action, the less fear there is. Because as soon as you take the first action, the first step, the fear is almost zero. But the longer we wait, the more this expands over time. And I think this is where a lot of us get paralyzed in this fear, is where we have this big goal, big objective, and we just let it sit there as just a goal. As Shia LaBeouf says, don't let your dreams be dreams, right? You want to make sure that, okay, this might be a great dream, but how quickly can I bring this into action? Because the quicker I can bring this into action, the more I can reduce this fear. Realistically, all fear is just friction between you and doing what is required to get you to a goal. So the more you can bring that into now, then the less fear there's going to be.
Yeah, I mean, it makes so much sense. Like, you have this big dream, and before you've taken the first step, you're thinking about everything that could be, and naturally you're going to overthink, and it's going to just produce more fear and reduce the chance you actually take action. But as soon as you take the first step, well, then you have to think about what's the very next step I'm going to take. Like, what is logically going to follow this, and what it brings your attention, to the present, to the now, to what is the action that I'm going to take right now, instead of what's this possibility? Oh, but that could happen. You're thinking about everything that could go wrong. You're almost like rationalizing why you shouldn't do it if you just let it sit there and sit there.
Yeah.
It's not what you want.
Yeah, so I think the big takeaway from comparing up here is that when you compare up, when you see material outcome, you have to very quickly figure out, if you decide that, okay, this is genuinely a material outcome I want, what are the actions required for me to get there? And am I willing to do those actions? Because if you're not willing to do those actions required for you to get to that material outcome, you have to just remove that as a desire. As hard as it may be, you cannot desire something that you're not willing to do what it takes to get there, because it is just going to create this sort of existential crisis within you where you constantly have big dreams, but you're not willing to do what it takes. Release the desire if you're not willing to do what is required, but being able to compare up allows you to see what is possible, break a lot of limiting beliefs, which can be very valuable, but you also have to break a lot of these desires if you're not willing to do what it takes.
Yeah, and I think starting that process is really the best thing you can do. If you just are half thinking about, oh, I kind of want this, I kind of want that, but not actually making a decision, okay, well, is it something that you actually want? And then taking that next step to think, okay, if this is what I want, what do I need to do? What are the sacrifices that everyone else who has this outcome has made? If you don't get to that point, then everything is just building up in your head as these like half wants that you're, allowing to create more pain in your life, that is things that you think you might want, but you don't have yet. And you're delaying the inevitable that you're going to have to confront. Well, is it something that I want or not? Am I willing to make those sacrifices or not? Like, you answer those two questions and you can very quickly release yourself of all of that pain.
Yeah. And for those listening right now, if you're thinking, okay, well, there's this big goal that I want, but I don't necessarily know what is required for me to get there. We live in this beautiful era now where we have AI, and all you can do is get as specific as possible on exactly what you want and get AI to tell you, okay, exactly what do you think is required for me to get there? What do you think are the actions? And don't say, okay, AI, be nice to me. But say, okay, be honest to me. What exactly do I have to do to get there? Very quickly, you'll get an answer. It's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be the 10 out of 10, the only things I have to do and I will achieve this, but it will at least give you a good idea of what is required. For example, if your goal is, okay, I want to be in the NBA. It's like, okay, what is required for me to be in the NBA, AI? And AI will probably tell you, well, assuming that you're 6'10", then here are a set of actions that you have to do, including training X hours a day. Very quickly you realize, okay, either I'm willing to do that or I'm not willing to do that, right? For any big goal there is, assuming that you have some sort of baseline either intelligence or some sort of genetic predisposition, which most people have what is required to achieve most goals, it very quickly becomes, these are the set of actions, and you can figure this out really quickly and decide for yourself, do I want this or not? The quicker that you can do this, the better, because if you sit with a big goal that you can't achieve for a long period of time, it's a lot harder for you to get rid of this and get this out of your mind.
Yeah, and I think the more that those actions that it spits out seem like, oh, that wouldn't be that hard for me to do, it's probably an indication that this is a goal that's more suited towards what you're built for, something that you're naturally going to be good at and be drawn to. It's not going to feel like as much work for you, and so you're more likely to succeed. But no, I think we've covered like what comparing up is potentially bad for, but what it can be used for to actually help you get to your ideal self, to the things that you want out of life.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that comparing up can do before we move on is that it can normalize action taking. If you're comparing yourself to people who are at a very high level, they might not be all the time flexing, okay, this is what I do, but very quickly you'll see, okay, these are the actions they do. And I think subconsciously you will start normalizing taking those kind of actions. And I think that is very beneficial, because I think the next step or the next problem that we have, which is comparing ourselves down, does the complete opposite. Because when we compare ourselves down, when we compare ourselves to people who are not where we want to be, when we say compare down, we're not talking about people that are worse than us. We're just talking about people who haven't achieved the kind of things that we want to achieve. And I think one of the things that that does is it very quickly normalizes a lack of action taking. Because realistically, for them to have achieved what they have achieved, which is not what you want, that required a set of actions, or more likely a set of not taking very many actions. So all that's happening is you're normalizing the fact that you are not doing those actions. As we know, the only thing that sits between us and our goals is a set of actions that we take. If you are around people who have not achieved what you want, then they do not take those actions that are going to get them to the goal that you want to get to, which means that you're normalizing not doing the actions required to get you there, which is a lot more dangerous. Hey, real quick, if you're an online entrepreneur and you want to turn your distraction into deep work using engineered systems, not motivational willpower, then you can join the Modern Monk community for free at school.com/Modern Monk, or you can click the link in the description below. For everyone else, keep enjoying the podcast.
Now, it's interesting you use the word normalization because it's not going to feel normal when you're comparing yourself to these people that you look up to. But that is ideally where you're going to get to the point, and it all starts with that one step, the one action that then makes it feel like, okay, well, this is something I do. These are the decisions I make to get to this action. And yeah, you're right. Comparing down is just going to be the opposite. You're going to be surrounded by people making decisions that don't lead you to the outcome that you want. And that's just as difficult as knowing what all the actions are and not wanting to take them.
Yeah. And the other thing I think it brings on is these limiting beliefs, especially when you surround yourself with people who don't achieve what you want, is that they usually have a belief system on what they believe is possible, and it's usually far less than what you need to be believing to achieve what you want to believe. And subconsciously or consciously, these limiting beliefs start creeping in to ourselves. If we surround ourselves and expose ourselves with these beliefs for long enough, they start seeping into how we believe, to how we perceive the world, which means it's going to influence how we act. And if it influences how we act, it's going to influence the outcomes that we get in our life. And it really works as this flywheel effect where the stronger that we believe something, the more it will impact our actions. And the more it impacts our actions, the more it impacts our outcomes. And the more it impacts our outcomes, simply the more it's going to impact our beliefs. So it works on this real flywheel system. And the more you expose yourself to these limiting beliefs, the more you think that something is not possible, which means the more you don't take action towards that goal, and the less you achieve it, the less likely you are to achieve it. And I think that's why there is this benefit of comparing yourself up, is that you keep building stronger and stronger beliefs. Whereas if you compare yourself, or you're surrounding yourselves with people who do not hold the beliefs that you need to hold, is that it does end up seeping into how you think and therefore into how you act.
Yeah, there's definitely an osmosis that occurs of the environment that you're in and the beliefs that other people have around you. And that's something I think you just have to be aware of. And I think trying to negate that by not comparing yourself to the people that are around you is really beneficial. I think you can still have these relationships, but not comparing what you do to what they do, because they're not heading towards the outcome that you want. And so I think once you can identify that, you can kind of just notice it. And I think just being aware of it is really the first step, and that creates a kind of cascade of changing your own beliefs and your own interactions with your environment.
Yeah. I mean, we had a micro example of this today. We were on a call in the private community, and one of the things we were talking about was one of the guys wanted to run a marathon, and he just ran 25 kilometers. He'd be running 20 kilometers like consecutively straight for the past few weeks. And he said, well, I want to run a marathon in 90 days, but I don't think it's possible. And you and I are sitting there thinking, man, you've already run 20 Ks. Like, you could run a marathon right now if you really wanted to, but it was this belief that was holding him back. And we knew that that meant that he wasn't going to run a marathon in 90 days because he didn't physically believe it was possible. We went through this exact same situation. I went from basically not being able to run to running a marathon in 6 weeks. And this isn't to flex. This is just to say that I thought it was physically possible. I believed that it was possible. I was around you who'd run 7 marathons by that point in a row, 7 months in a row. And I thought, okay, well, I can do this. If Toby can do 7 in 7 months, now 18 in 18 months, I can do this too. It's very, very possible. But for him, he wasn't surrounding himself with people who could do that, where that was a normal behavior, where that was a normal belief to hold. And that was holding him back as to what he thought was possible. I think that's kind of a micro example here of just who you surround yourself with has a big impact on your beliefs, and therefore on the actions that you take and the timelines that you set for yourself for the goals you want to achieve.
Yeah, big time. I think that's a huge shift, just knowing, unlocking like what you think is possible for yourself. I mean, that happened on the macro scale for me when I, went through this big shift in life, when I, broke off a toxic relationship, and I kind of had this reflection point of, okay, like, well, now what does my next 2 years look like? What could my next 40 years look like? And I'm really glad that I was around the kind of people who were thinking big. They had big dreams for themselves. They weren't setting, limiting beliefs on what they thought might have been possible. And so being in that environment allowed me to see a bigger, more possibility for what I was capable of, what I could achieve. Yeah. And I resonate a lot with that example of being surrounded by people who unlock what's possible for you.
Yeah.
And I think that had I been in a different environment where people were telling me maybe that's too big, you can't, I don't think you can really do that, or maybe you need to, think a bit smaller or be more reasonable. Mm-hmm. I think it would have stopped me from achieving the things that I'm achieving right now. Like 18 months later, I've, moved across the world, I've quit my job, I'm pursuing, my own business that's really fulfilling to me, and every day feels like an absolute blessing. And I can contribute a lot of where I am now to the environment and the beliefs that I had then, which are based on the people that I was around.
Yep. And for a lot of people listening to this right now, you might think, okay, so I just need to have really, really strong beliefs. Yes, but I think the big caveat here is that beliefs only serve you if they serve your actions, if they change your actions. Because a lot of people spend all day looking in the mirror saying affirmations, or they spend all day trying to manifest whatever it is, which is fine. But if you don't change your actions, if you don't do more actions to move you towards your goal, then nothing about your life is going to change. The only reason that your new beliefs served you, that new paradigm that you built served you, was because it served the actions that you took to get you to your goals. If you had this whole new belief system and you changed nothing about your life, nothing would have changed. I had this exact situation my first year working a 9-to-5 job, where I thought, okay, 100% entrepreneurship just is the path for me. I absolutely have to do it. And I spent all day literally cycling into work, listening to business podcasts. At lunchtime on my lunch breaks, the whole time I would spend listening to business podcasts. On the cycle home, I would spend listening to business podcasts. I was an entrepreneur, except for the fact that I didn't have a business and I wasn't taking any actions towards being an entrepreneur. So whilst I might have built up this belief system and all of these concepts and ideas, nothing about my life changed because I never linked it to action. And I think that is the big differentiator here, is whilst we can build up these beliefs, surround ourselves with the right people, it's only beneficial if it allows you to actually take action to move forward.
Yeah, and usually that action is going to come from pain. Like the pain needs to reach a certain threshold where you're like, no, okay, something needs to change, which means I'm doing something, I'm taking action. And like comparing yourself up and like the pain of not having that, the gap between you and them, that can be painful and that can cause you to take action. Being surrounded by people who aren't doing the things that you want to do, aren't heading towards the outcomes that you want, that can be painful as well, and that can cause action. But they're both a little bit dirty fuels, like this comparison to other people. And I think ideally we want to get to the point where you know what your North Star is, you know who you want to be, and that is like a pull. It's a drive that is causing you to want to take these actions consistently every day because you know you're getting a step closer to who you want to become. And I think that type of fuel is really is the stuff that can motivate you, or not motivate you at all, that keeps you consistent without motivation.
100%. Yeah. I also wanted to touch on the fact that when we talk about comparing to people down from us, we're very specifically talking about people who haven't achieved things that we want. But it doesn't mean that you compare yourself to them any less. So for example, if you're in a job right now, which we've both been in this situation, you're in a job right now and you don't find it fulfilling whatsoever. It's not where you want to be, and you go, okay, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to get on this route. I want to do this thing. It means that you have to quit the current path you're on and potentially be earning less or be perceived as doing worse than people who are not where you want to be. And these might be the people that you're comparing yourself to, who are also in these jobs that you don't want. They have outcomes that you don't want. But you think, okay, as soon as I try and do this new thing, I'm going to be doing worse than them. I'm going to be less than them. And that for a lot of people is really scary. I think this is where a lot of this fear comes from, is that you feel like, okay, you're falling behind if you take on a new opportunity or you do something else. But the reality is that you will do, or you will technically be doing worse than them in terms of their metrics, in terms of maybe how many dollars you make or whatever that may be. But if you're genuinely pursuing something aligned with your North Star, as you talked about, that is already ahead of them. Plus, generally, if you're aligning with your North Star, you're aligning with a bigger, higher leverage opportunity vehicle, which means that short term, you may be doing worse. But zoom out a few years, and of course, you're going to surpass these people that you shouldn't have been comparing yourself to in the first place. And I think this is a real danger of comparing yourself to people who've achieved things that you don't want, is that you then anchor yourself to these outcomes that you never wanted in the first place, and it prevents you from taking on the opportunity that you genuinely want to do, that genuine North Star opportunity.
Yeah. It's a whole package. When you're comparing yourself to them, you're comparing yourself to what they want and what they have achieved. And 90% of the time, that is not what you want, and it's not what you want to achieve. So you just end up creating more pain for yourself when you're comparing yourself to someone who you don't want to be, and you find yourself lacking. It's like there's not a useful comparison that you should be making. And I think, unfortunately, that is what we're surrounded by constantly. Either the people we're physically surrounded by, or online, the people that are presented to us are probably people that we don't really want to be at all, but you find yourself naturally just comparing yourself as a default. So I think like understanding that is something that you are drawn to doing and naturally going to do, and having this realization that, okay, well, I can ask myself these questions. Do I want this outcome? Am I willing to make these sacrifices? You can negate some of that pain and actually be driven towards, your North Star, the things that are going to be fulfilling to you.
Yeah, and this comes back to fear again. Let's get specific about the fear here. What are you afraid of happening? Okay, well, I'm going to stop doing what I already hate doing anyway. I'm going to be perceived as doing worse in the eyes of other people who are doing things that I don't want to do anyway. Long term, I take on an opportunity that genuinely matters to me. Either it does really well, which is likely if it's genuinely something I'm passionate about because I'm going to do the actions required for me to get there. Or worst case, I'm just back where I was, where I'm just doing what I don't like. So worst case, very worst case, you're just where you were at the very beginning. There's all this fear of, okay, everything about my life is going to change. Everyone's going to hate me. Everyone's going to think I'm a failure. I'm going to starve to death and be cast out in the streets. The downside of taking risk is so low right now. It's so extremely low, but the upside potential is so high. And if your genuine risk that you think about is that I'm going to be losing at a game that other people are playing, this is not a real genuine risk. When we get very specific about this, I think the fear is going to drop significantly.
Yeah. And I mean, to link it back to what we've been talking about again, action. This is all negated by consistently taking the right action. Then the inevitable will happen. You will be making progress. You will uncover the right path, and you will be making progress. You will get to where you want to go, or you'll figure out that it's not where you want to be, and you'll be able to continue moving. But unless you're making action, you're just accumulating fear and being stagnated in the same place, which is probably going to make you want to compare yourself more to the people around you and to where you think you could have been or where you wish you were. Yeah. Action is just the antidote.
Yeah. Oh, completely. I mean, that action will always sit at the core of everything we talk about, because action always sits at the core of the outcomes you're going to get in your life. It's the catalyst for your change. People spend all this time researching and trying to learn things, but the reality is, if you just took action, you would learn so much faster and make progress faster at the exact same time. It's always going to sit at the core here. But I want us to bring this back to, okay, clearly comparing ourselves up has some small upsides in breaking some limiting beliefs. This can be good. Comparing ourselves down, basically never going to be beneficial whatsoever. But I think the end goal that we want to very quickly come to is comparing ourselves to ourselves and where we want to be. So how do you think about that? And how do you think about becoming someone who just compares himself to themselves?
Yeah, I mean, it has to start with the North Star. You have to know where you want to be, what your ideal self looks like. And getting clarity on that trickles down into the actions that you take, the beliefs that you have. But you have to be really clear on what that is, and you have to get granular with the detail. And it has to be all encompassing, to your whole life. It can't just be one aspect of it. It needs to be, it needs to really reflect the whole identity of who you'll be as this person and all that that entails. And I think once you do that, you can release yourself from the need to compare up and to compare around, because you have this really clear idea of who you should look like, or what you should look like in a few years, and who that person is and why you want to be that person. And I think that's really how you can stop comparing yourself to those around you, is getting really clear on who you are, who your ideal self is.
Yeah, because when you have the ideal version of yourself, one of the big things that it does is it means that you can stop playing other people's games. If you don't really have a good picture of who you want to be and what you want to look like, then you very quickly fall into the trap of playing other people's games, playing by other people's metrics, trying to please other people, trying to do what other people do. Not going to make you very happy or fulfilled long term. So having this good idea of what you want to look like, I think is very powerful. When I think about how do I think about how I want to look like, we talk about the North Star. When I think about the North Star, I'm thinking about one specific objective, one specific key thing that I want to accomplish, that I align the majority of my actions to. Now, this will be very beneficial at getting you to that outcome, but it's often going to be beneficial to have some sort of what we call side quest, things that you do on the side. Otherwise, you just become a unidimensional person obsessed over one goal. So this is why we've added, so for us, our North Star is business. Business is what we focus on as a North Star. We also have a few side quests. We like running, we like lifting weights, we like learning languages, we like exploring different countries. We have a few different side quests that we have to make more of a complete life and more of a complete individual. But within each of these side quests, there's still an objective that we're trying to pursue and trying to get to. And when you clearly have your North Star, where you're trying to work towards, and a few side quests, but all of these have very clear, tangible objectives to get to, it's very easy for you to figure out what are the actions, what are the inputs required for me to get there. When it's very clear what those actions are required for you to get there, and you've really thought about this and thought, I can do this consistently for a long period of time, this is your ideal self. It's the person that consistently does the actions to make them this person, right? Because your ideal self will be the person that has these outcomes, but the ideal self, or the ideal version of you today, is just the person that does the actions required for you to actually get there in the first place. So then very quickly, the only thing that you should be comparing yourself to is the person that does all of those actions required for me to get there. And then whenever you're thinking, am I falling behind or am I ahead? It's all based on, am I doing the actions required for me to get to my goals or not? I think that becomes very, very obvious and very clear, removes a lot of that fear, allows you to play your own games, and puts you in a really good position where you're very aligned with who you want to be rather than playing other people's games.
Yeah, and it's a great reminder to not let perfection get in the way, because ideally it's just, am I the person that's taking the actions that the ideal self would to become that person? And so it doesn't need to be perfect, and it doesn't need to be, exact to the T, dot the line, in every direction all the time, or you don't need to know, you're never going to know exactly what it's going to look like down the track, but it's just, am I the person that's taking the actions that my ideal self would to get to that point? And I think bringing it back to that, removing that, not letting perfection get in the way of taking action now, I think is a really key point to touch on.
Yeah, because these inputs, these actions that you take that are going to get you to a North Star, they're going to adapt and change over time. They're never going to be constant. The point of us leading with action here and consistently doing those inputs, those actions, is that very quickly you go through these feedback cycles where you'll take these actions, assuming that you're actually measuring what you have, you can very quickly identify what's the current problem, what's the current bottleneck, let me adjust my actions and continue to move forward. And this way you can move forward extremely quickly. The idea of, okay, these are the actions I need to take, I'm not going to touch it and it's just going to be perfect forever. It's not going to happen, because even if it was perfect, all that's going to happen is you're going to progress to the next level, and then you're going to have new problems, and there's new actions required for you to solve them, right? Yeah. It's never going to be stagnant. It's always going to be changing over time. The idea is not to be perfect. The idea is to very quickly start orienting yourself with, who is this ideal version of myself, and how can I just start taking actions towards that? And over time, those actions will improve.
Yeah. And I think we both know that realistically, all of the goals that we've set, and even the North Star and the side quest goals, they're figures that will move. And it's really about who you're going to become on the journey of this person. Like it's just forcing you to change, to grow, like setting these goals. And the only thing that's actually going to make you grow is taking the actions each day. So I think knowing that as well, I think is just more of a pull that every step is, a step closer to becoming that person.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fantastic to be able to have, okay, these are the set of actions required to get me to my goal. Because if it's just, here is my goal, then every day that you don't have this goal, it's like, I haven't hit my goal yet. This sucks. But if every day it's like, I did all the actions required for me to get there, I've done what is required. Like this is relieving. This is good. I can feel pleased and happy about this. I'm doing what is required because, of course, the day you hit that goal is the day you're going to need a new goal. It's going to need a change. This day isn't the day that everything ends. It's just the day that everything changes. So the idea that you're just going to get there and finally feel satisfied, it's just not going to work like that. You're much better off feeling satisfied, doing what is required for you to get you there. Because as soon as you get there, there's just going to be a new set of actions required for you to get to the new goal you've set for yourself.
Yeah, and I mean, you shrugged, you let out a breath there and said relief, but it's not relief. It like fuels you, and I know we both feel like this. Like it ignites you, having done what you know is moving you to where you want to go. It's not like a relief thing. It like fires you up. It makes you feel great because you're reaffirming that identity that I am this person. I am becoming this person. I'm making progress towards these goals, and they are fulfilling to me. And so it really just elevates the rest of your life and all the experiences that you have, and it lets you live on this high of making progress, of becoming a better version of yourself.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one of the ways that we've been setting up the days of us and what we're doing with our clients as well is that you try and do all of the inputs, all the actions as the first things that you do throughout the day, right? You might have some sort of little morning routine to get you ready, but you do this first, which means that the rest of your day is just so much sweeter. Knowing that you've done everything required for you to get there for the day, it just makes all of this free time that you have just feel so good, feel so amazing. You just have this drive. You feel like, okay, I'm really aligned with who I want to be right now. Not only have I done everything required for me to get to the day, I also have this freedom to go and enjoy the rest of my life and experience the things I want to experience without having this regret of not moving towards this goal. Because you don't have these inputs. It's just, I haven't hit this goal yet. I always have this little bit of anxiety in the back of my head going, I'm not doing what is required. If you can finish your day, let's say around midday, a bit after midday, and then have the rest of your day to do what you want to do on the back of knowing that you've done everything required for the day to get you to your goals, this is a really nice feeling.
Yeah, and I think it's fundamental to how we've designed the life is that it can be consistently completed because it's not a 12-hour grind. It's something that we can do every day. And so like people talk about like waking up with this productivity debt that like, oh, until I've done all of these things, nothing is satisfied. I don't think that I don't think that's a bad way to think about it. If it's something you can consistently do every day and something that you want to do. I think if it's something that takes up 12 hours and it's a grind, and then you get to the end of the day and all you've been doing is working on these tasks and you finally get them done, you're like, oh, thank God I got them done. Like that's a different story to being able to segment your life, that you have like this period, this couple of hours that you're making progress, and that allows you to enjoy the rest of your life even more. I think being able to do that consistently and take the action again and again and again is going to help you compare yourself to your ideal, because you're constantly reaffirming it. Like the feedback loop is shorter.
Yeah. And
I don't think there's anything wrong with having that like productivity debt. I don't see it like that. I know I've heard lots of people talking about that as like a negative thing, like, oh, you shouldn't be starting the day off at a negative and then getting to a zero, but that's not how we've been experiencing it. Like this, it's more that it just becomes a multiplier for the rest of life.
Yeah, 100%. And I think this could be a whole separate podcast on comparing, for example, a 12-hour workday to the way we work, which is realistically less than 5 hours a day of genuinely doing tasks. But the whole idea of the work that we do is we're trying to get output. And output is really volume and leverage, which is the time that you put into something and the return that you can get on that time. If you're working 12 hours a day, every hour that you spend working, you're getting significantly less out than using your most potent mental energy. So your return on time is already going to be worse. you can't work 12 hours a day every single day forever, which means that zoom out on a long enough time horizon and very quickly the volume becomes very similar. Because if you work 12 hours a day, but you can only do it 5 or 6 days a week, this already reduces you down to, I don't know, 8 hours a day or something like that. Zoom it out over a long enough time horizon, the chance of you quitting, very high. The chance of you not hitting 12-hour days, very, very high. So if we compare total volume as well, you'll notice that you're much better off doing something that you can consistently do on your best energy to get you the best return on your time and zoom out over a long time horizon, a really good volume as well, than just trying to grind all day on fumes, essentially, not on your best energy, very quickly giving up and quitting, and then realizing that, okay, I would have been better off working a fraction of the time, but doing this far, far more effectively. It's a completely separate podcast to talk about this, but yes.
No, but I think that concept of lock in, grind 24/7 probably comes from comparing up and comparing down. Like when you're comparing yourself to your ideal self, it makes a lot more sense to be doing what is possible consistently. And like for that to be not only satisfactory, but completely fulfilling and awesome. So I think that's an interesting link that we can draw between those two concepts, that are how you end up thinking that that's the solution. It's like if your problem is, oh, well, I don't have this thing and I'm comparing myself to these people and they have this thing. It's like, okay, well then you shorten your time horizon and there's all this pain because you don't have the thing. And so you have to go out and get it like now. It's like, you come over here to comparing yourself to your ideal, then you're extending your time horizons. You're thinking about the person you become along this longer journey. And it's really all about how can I consistently complete the actions that get me there.
Yeah. It's all coming down, a lot of this anyway, is coming down to your ability to delay gratification. If you give yourself a very, very short window of time because you're unable to delay gratification, you have to fill that window of time with a lot of action because you know very quickly you're going to give up. If you're just able to delay gratification over a longer period of time and just do the actions that you know will get there consistently, then you're going to hit your goal. Like the likelihood is probably 4 to 5x. The enjoyment of the experience to getting towards that goal is probably going to 4 to 5x as well. And very soon when you hit that goal, you're going to realize the goal wasn't to get to this goal. The goal was enjoying this process in the first place. So it has to 100% be the approach to go for.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think just comparing yourself to your ideal is really fundamental to that process. And I think it's maybe something that we're circling back to now, something that we understand. But I think that we were probably doing it, back at the start of the journey when we were making all of these decisions about what our life was going to look like and, the goals that we were chasing. So I think if you can get to that point now where you're trying to compare yourself to your ideal and understand that that's the process you're going to, you're probably going to have even better results.
Yeah, 100%. So if we're comparing ourselves to our ideal self, which is the set of actions required to take, then we know, okay, I just have to do this. I have to do this consistently. If you're comparing yourself to other people who've achieved things that you want to achieve and there's just this big goal that you're trying to hit, then it is, wow, there's a big gap between me and where I want to be. I need to work all the time and get this done. I'm going to be in a lot of pain until I get there. And then when I get there, there's just going to be more pain because there's a new person who's further ahead that I want to get to. That's the whole idea of bringing this back to comparing yourself to where you currently are and what you can currently do to get there. When you zoom out and think about how can I do this consistently over a long period of time?
Yeah, consistent action, long period of time, comparing yourself to your ideal. Yeah, I think that really is fundamental to all of the best things that we've been able to achieve in the past 18 months.
Yeah, and I think it will just continue to stack and stack and stack, especially when the actions required to get you to your goal, that ideal self, you can just do, as we always say, consistently. So I think we've got to the bottom of this here, right? We need to use the fact that there are people ahead of us to break limiting beliefs that we might have, identify potential goals that we want, see if we're genuinely willing to do what it takes, realistically, just completely discard the idea of comparing yourself to people who have not achieved what you want because it's not what you want. There's no point in comparing yourself to that. And then building out, what is your North Star? What are the few side quests you want to do? What are the inputs required for you to get there? Build out those inputs into a set of actions, and then your ideal self is the person who does those actions over a long time horizon every single day. And you being the perfect self, you being on track, is you doing those actions You being behind is you not doing those actions. That's it.
Couldn't agree more. Very well said.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks for watching this episode. Not much else to say. Hopefully you had a few takeaways from this. Hopefully you invested your time and attention well. And we'll see you for another episode. Cheers.
See you then.